Okay, welcome. This live is for the evangelists. This live is for people who don't want to question what happened to Rene Good and Alex Pretti. It's very important you listen to this because your Bible thumping bullshit that's teaching you not to believe in your eyes is some massive cultish sick shit. So what's ironic is the Scofield Bible, which was cobbled together by misogyny from the onset of Constantine to the now. We're going to go to the beginning with Paul, who supposedly saw Yeshua appear to him on his path. And for you guys who have been like force-fed this shit when you were kids and you've come out of it, you have incredible bravery. You actually hacked out of a very powerful cult. I'm going to read you what took me, 10 minutes to research. So any adult that is still going to push this concept of don't believe in what you see. By the way, there was a young woman who I reposted who said she was part of the evangelistic movement. And apparently you guys are taught not to believe in your eyes, that you have to consult other people to tell them what you should believe. Forget your eyes. And what that does is it destroys the third eye. It destroys intuition. So what I just found out today is that these evangelistic movements destroy intuition before it can thrive. And intuition is the road to speaking to God, to speaking to the archangels, to speaking to your guide team. And then you're left stripped, where all you can do is walk to a pastor or priest and ask them what you should believe. This is, if you don't think that's a cult, I don't know what to say. But go ahead and share the live. Please share the live because this is important. To all the people coming out of Mormonism, Lutheran, Baptist, whatever the fuck branches this is, the various branches of the poison tree. But let me read, and we'll go from there. And what elicited this was this concept. Well, racism. Here we go again with that. And this is probably not for most of you because I notice that some of you don't want to hear truths that can be verified. Okay? Jesus was born in Palestine. The race in that part of the world is Semitic, which means they look Arabic. And he would have spoken Aramaic, where there are people still who can speak and read Aramaic. So let's start. The story of Paul, originally Saul of Tarsus, is one of the most controversial and consequential in the history of Christianity. Born a Roman citizen in Tarsus, modern-day Turkey, he was a devout Pharisee, educated under the prominent Jewish teacher Gamaliel in Jerusalem. Saul was not just a religious scholar, he was a zealot. So we already start on a bad foot because we know how crazy zealots can be, but let's continue. Known for his violent persecution of the early followers of Jesus. Did you hear that here? You little evangelistic crowd over there. Let's read this again. Let's read this again because it's important. He was a zealot known for his violent persecution of the early followers of Jesus. He oversaw the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. He oversaw the stoning. Did you know that? Of Stephen, the first Christian martyr, and actively hunted down. Did you know that? Actively hunted down Jesus's disciples, dragging them to prisons? Are we okay here? Let's continue. His transformation into Paul, the self-proclaimed apostle to the Gentiles, is shrouded in mystery and debate. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Let's continue, because this is insane. Let's continue. According to the book of Acts, Paul experienced a dramatic, oh my God, conversion on the road to Damascus, where he claimed to have been blinded by a vision of Jesus, Acts 9. However, this story is only recorded by Luke, a later follower of Paul in the book of Acts, in his own letters. But hey, let's forget about the Dead Sea Scroll and the Nag Hammadi, or the Gospel of Mary, or the Gnostic Gospel. Let's forget about that. But let's put our entire fucking civilization on this. Let's continue. He claimed to have been blinded by a vision of Jesus. However, the story is only recorded by Luke, a later follower. I can't even fucking. I'm so pissed off. A follower of Paul in the book of Acts. In his own letters, Paul never described this event. Instead, he vaguely mentions. He never described this event. He vaguely mentions receiving a revelation. Galatian, Galatians, Galatians 1:12, which he uses to legitimize his authority despite never having met Jesus in his life. But he hunted down Jesus' disciples. He sure did. Let's continue. But this is the man who an entire belief system is literally, that has terrorized people throughout the centuries. Most of yours and my trauma comes from that timeline. Do you get me? Let's continue. Share the live. Share it widely. Oh, there's only 2 people who wants to listen to that? How interesting. God forbid we should find out the truth of how this religion was formed. But let's continue. Paul's rise to power within early Christianity was nothing short of hostile takeover. There you go. Now we're talking. Unlike Peter, James, and the other disciples who had walked with Jesus, Paul had no firsthand experience of Jesus' teachings or ministry, yet he boldly declared himself an apostle, Galatians 1:1, and insisted that his version of the gospel was not only equal, but superior to that of the original disciples. Did you hear that? He spent years traveling across the Roman Empire, establishing churches and writing letters that would later become a significant portion of the New Testament. Do you realize that many of us are having visions of Yeshua coming to us in our meditations? Many of us who are not Christian. Explain that one. Let's continue. Oh, you're crazy. You're just crazy. No, we actually are connected to true Christ codes. That's why I'm doing this live for the 2 people sitting here. Because that, God forbid, 100 people would not want to listen to that. But this is to explain why what happened recently in the killing of 2 people is not being believed by. That's why you're scratching your head. I don't understand. Didn't you see the videos? Didn't you see what you saw? Well, this is a cult. Let's continue. Paul rises to power within early Christianity was nothing short of a hostile takeover. I wanted to repeat that. Unlike Peter, James, and the other disciples who had not walked with Jesus, Paul had no firsthand experience of Jesus' teachings or ministry, yet he boldly declared himself an apostle and insisted that his version of the gospel was not only equal but superior of that of the original disciples. He spent years traveling across the Roman Empire, establishing churches and writing letters that would later become a significant portion of the New Testament. What makes Paul's influence so problematic is how he fundamentally altered Jesus' message. Jesus had preached a radical egalitarian vision of love. Did you hear that? Egalitarian vision of love, liberation in the kingdom of God as a present reality. Did you hear that? As a present reality. Not you get to die and you go to heaven. As a present reality. And theologians know this. Unless they walk into these brainwashing schools. I don't know. But real theologians in schools like Oxford, Yale, they know this. They know this. Let me continue. As a present reality, he centered the marginalized, listen to this, the marginalized, women, the poor, and outcasts, and challenged corrupt systems of power. Paul, however, shifted the focus to abstract theological concepts like sin, salvation through belief alone, Romans 3:28. By the way, Romans 3:28, on the side note, just so you know, is 13 in tarot. It's the devil. But let's continue. Actually, no, it's not the devil. Excuse me. It's death. Scorpio energy, transformation. And obedience to authority, Romans 13:1-2. He transformed a movement rooted in social justice and communal living. And did you hear that? Social justice and communal living, community, into an institutional religion focused on dogma and hierarchy. Now, if you follow me, you've heard me talk about the Cathars, who actually literally followed Jesus's wise words. One of Paul's most damaging legacies is his misogyny. Jesus had elevated women to unprecedented roles within his movement. Mary Magdalene was the first witness to the resurrection, John 20:11-18, and women like Junia was recognized as apostles, Romans 16:7. Paul, however, systematically, did you hear that? Systematically erased women's leadership. In his letters, he commended women should remain silent in the churches, Corinth 1:14-34, or 14:34. I honestly, and instructed wives, submit to your husbands, Ephesians 5:22. He reduced women to secondary roles. What is 5:22? Yeah, that's 9. How strange. Anyway, he reduced women to secondary roles despite the fact that early Christian communities had been led by women prophets and teachers. Acts 2:17-18. Did you know that? Did they teach you that when you went to church? Did they teach you that in Sunday school? Should I repeat it? I don't think so. Watch this live on YouTube if they allow it. Let's continue. My God, the evil. One of Paul's most damaging legacies is his misogyny. Let me repeat this line because this is important. Jesus had elevated women to unprecedented roles within his movement. Mary Magdalene was the first witness to the resurrection. This is important to me to say it again. Listen, we're going to continue though. Paul's antibody, listen to this. Paul's anti-sex rhetoric further distorted Jesus' teachings. In 1 Corinthians 7, he promotes celibacy as the ideal state and frames the body as a source of sin. We had a sick fuck create a religion. A sick zealot fuck who thought the body was ugly. This is insane, man. A stark contrast. Listen to what Jesus taught. See, if you really want to know Jesus, then go and get to learn Jesus. Don't go around reading the same fucking book again and again and again and again, trying to understand it. There's nothing to understand. Rhetoric, dogma is going to harm people. It's taking away the initial intuition, third eye openings that we were all born with. And the problem with this, and this is why I'm reading this to you, is because over the eons of our incarnations in these kinds of religions, it has stripped away our third eye, the calcification, the cemented over of our third eye. It's like taking a source of water, of healing water, and literally pouring cement over it. I don't want to drink from water, from this water. I'd rather drink from a tap. It's insane. It's breaking my heart as I read. It's breaking my heart. So he promotes celibacy as the ideal state and frames the body as a source of sin, a stark contrast to Jesus' celebration of embodied spirituality and healing. This dualistic view of the flesh versus spirit has fueled centuries of shame around sexuality and the body, particularly for women. Paul's conflicts with the original disciples were legendary. The Jerusalem Council Acts 15 reveal a bitter dispute between Paul and Peter over whether Gentile converts needed to follow Jewish laws. Many scholars believe that Paul's versions of Christianity centered on belief rather than action and focused on institutionalized power, marginalized the original Jesus movement, which was led by James the Just, Jesus's brother. This man, Paul, went against Jesus's brother, James the Just. Did you know he had a brother? Or did you only hear about Paul? The early church fathers, Eusebius, even records that Paul was seen as a false prophet by some of Jesus's original followers. That's all I gotta say. What the fuck are you reading? This is why I said we need to rewrite the entire thing as the book of light. And as we start downloading information, as ancient scrolls are revealed, they will be revealed. I believe in 1947, I think it was the Dead Sea Scrolls that were revealed. Okay? More ancient scrolls will be found that were buried by the Essenes, the Gnostics, by the original disciples of Jesus, actual writings. The consequences of Paul's influence are still felt today. His letters make up nearly half of the New Testament, and his theology became the foundation of the institutional church, a church that has historically silent mystics, witches, I'm going to say high priestesses, because Mary of Magdalene and Mother Mary were high priestesses. That's why they were hated, because they were powerful, because their intuitive third eye was never closed. And they had the power and the potency of healers by touch and by frequency. And why do I know that? Read between the lines. Read what she says in the Gospels of Mary. When she talks to the apostle after the death of Jesus, they can barely understand what she's saying. When the apostles asked Jesus, "Tell us, what do you teach her that you cannot teach us?" He's basically saying, you're not ready to hear what I'm saying. That's why I'm teaching her, because she gets it. You can't, you're still learning how to tie your shoes. Oh, wait, you don't have shoes. You're still in sandals. Oh, you're barefoot. I'd have to teach you how to walk all over again. By the way, I'm a devotee of Yeshua, but by no means do I follow these books, this book that has been written again and again and again. But let's continue. His legacy is one of controlled dogma and the suppression of the divine feminine, the very energies you work to reclaim through your healing and spiritual practice. You, my fine young women, my fine young priestesses and goddesses, and my masculine, my divine masculines. For someone who embodies the wisdom of past lives, if you embody that, and being that you heal, you're probably a healer. If you're listening to me, you have the capacity, or you are a healer. You have the capacity, or you're a teacher. You have the capacity, or you are a psychic. Do you get what I'm saying? Paul's story is a reminder of how easily revolutionary movements can be co-opted by those seeking control. So apparently he couldn't hunt them all down, because that's what he was doing. So he decided, wait, why am I hunting them down? Let me just take over this revolution. I mean, basically, that's what he did. Let me take over their teachings. Now, what prompted me to go through all of that? Well, let me tell you. This is when I found out that Harrow Wool Feet of Bronze was actually not originally in the New Testament. It was in the book of Revelation. Because obviously I'm not a Bible scholar. And anyone that says I'm a Bible scholar, I give you my middle finger. Because you're not really a Jesuit devotee. You're not a Jesus Christ devotee. You're a devotee of the Bible written by the first misogyny ever recorded. Paul. So the book of Revelation, also called the book of Apocalypse, is the final book of the New Testament and is traditionally attributed to John the Apostle, often referred to as John of Patmos. Most scholars estimate the Revelation was written between 90 and 96 CE, after the Common Era. You know what I mean? In other words, after his death. So thereabouts. During the reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian, though some argue for an earlier date around 60. Yeah, Nero's reign? No, I don't think so. Let's just skip that because it's bullshit. Let me continue. Revelation was written decades after Jesus' death, likely 90 to 96 CE, not during his lifetime. It's a visionary apocalyptic text attributed to John Patmos, not Paul. The hair like wool, feet like bronze. And of course they talk about hair, white hair. In other words, it's not really how, we don't know what he looks like. We can only look at just basic common sense. He's in Palestine. He's Semitic. He's got it probably long curly hair to his shoulders, dark hair, dark eyes, or amber eyes, which is very common with the Semitic people, and things of that nature. Okay? The fact is, Paul co-opted the religion. He basically kidnapped it. And everything Yeshua had taught about female and the beauty of feminine power, revering the feminine, was absolutely destroyed. So he never met Jesus. Let's summarize. His authority comes from a vision, not firsthand discipleship. He's hunting down the disciples. He's literally hunting them down and taking their lives. This is the man that started the Roman Catholic Church. Are we okay here? Are we okay? But meanwhile, we're questioning the veracity of the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas. Are we okay? Do we have brains, or are we completely, have we been completely, lobotomized with brains? So when we look at what's happening with what happened in Minneapolis, because it's all connected to brainwashing. Now you understand? Now do you understand why they're looking at what you're looking at in 4 different fucking angles, and it's going, oh, I don't know, man. He making shit up because they're literally taught to not believe their own fucking eyes. That means if you don't believe in actually first accounts on video in 4K and you still don't believe it, how the fuck are you going to think through the mire created for 2,000 years? Oh, well, it's ancient doctrine. It's ancient doesn't mean it's okay. He reshaped Christianity into universal institutional religion, moving it away from its Jewish roots. Many scholars argue he erased the feminist, communal, and revolutionary aspect of Jesus' teachings. What were they? Women leadership, economic sharing, community. Misogyny and control. Paul letters, Corinthians 14:34 through 35, Ephesians 5:22, are often cited to justify patriarchal structures. His insistence on female silence and wifely submission contradicts Jesus' radical inclusion of women, Mary Magdalene as the apostle to the apostles. Anti-sex, anti-body rhetoric. Paul views on celibacy, Corinthians 1:7, and the flesh versus spirituality. Dualism has fueled centuries around sexuality and the body. Something if you're listening to me, this would fucking trigger you. Tantra is sex. It's literally yoga for householders, for lovers, for whether you're married or not. He taught Tantra. They both taught Tantra. And what I mean by taught, by example. By example. He loved Mary not because she was sensuous and incredibly intelligent and was his equal in every way, but he loved her for the telepathy they could share and the ease of how they felt with each other in silence. He didn't ask her to be silent to submit to him. They would share silent moments together on the beach, in their meditations, because you see, he had been in India, and I've done lives on that where I've read to you. 5 different witnesses saw writing at the Hemis temple that showed that your Jesus Christ was here in a Tibetan temple. But let's not even think about that. 5 from 1887 to 1951 was the last person who saw recorded writings. I keep saying the same shit again and again and again, but I thought, yeah, let's look at who started this whole thing, where people will look at things that you see and you'll go, what the fuck, aren't we seeing the same thing? These are the kind of people that if you told them that the sky is purple and not blue, they'd start literally, do you understand it's a mind collapse? They'd actually start realizing, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not blue, it's purple. The sky is purple. Well, because so-and-so said the sky is purple. And I can't believe my eyes, so the sky is purple. I'm going to have to convince myself the sky is purple, it's not blue. You have to understand how people are corrupted. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. Keep your head together. We will never win fire with fire. This is a spiritual war. What does that mean? It's a spiritual battle. What does that mean? It's spiritual. It means keep your fucking head straight. Don't get angry. Impotent rage will have you fucking knocking your head against the wall. We're not here to convert people into sense. We're not here to convince people to see what you see. We're here to align with each other, to create an energy, an egregore of might and justice and equality. That's it. And of peace and abundance for all. That's it. We're not here to convince Jack. You can't convince this kind of mental illness. It is actually a mental illness. Believe it or not, it is. It's a mental illness. So I don't know what else I can say. But sorry, my friend. I see you. Let me see. Let me see. Any other intelligent question? You're welcome, because I'm doing this for those of you who had to walk out of Mormonism. You know who you are. I'm doing this for you who had to walk out of your institute. I mean, you walked out of an institution of mentally, how do I say this nicely? There's no nice way to say it. There's a mental fucking collapse here, okay? Okay, if you missed the beginning of what I read on what Paul was doing to Christians, literally disciples who had followed Jesus's. I mean, I feel like pounding my hand on the fucking table, and I don't want to make that noise. He hunted them down like dogs and then co-opted the teachings and twisted them like snakes, like venomous snakes. Jesus never said that. Read. Jesus lived in India. Read The Lost Years of Jesus by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Read Jesus in Aramaic by Neil Klotz. Read The Gnostic Gospel by Elaine Pagels. Read the Gospel of Mary. Read the Gospel of Thomas. And there are more. There's so many more books. Read the Nag Hammadi. Just fucking read. Read, and then sit. If you're a devotee of Jesus, okay, if you really love Mother Mary, they're brilliant, and I mentioned it before, they're brilliant young starseeds who are born in the 1990s and earlier, who are sitting in meditations getting downloads like you wouldn't believe. I trust that more. You know why I trust their fucking downloads more than this piece of shit that came called Paul? Because they're coming from a place of purity. They're coming up from a place, these downloads are coming from a place of love, devotion to Christ codes, not subjugation, can you imagine the man? Shall I read this from the beginning for a minute? This animal, let me read you the first line. Hang on. He oversaw the stoning of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. Do you know what it takes to stone someone? The first Christian martyr? He stoned him? He oversaw it? Now, what happened when they wanted to stone a woman who somehow there's multiple stories. She was a woman of the night. She had cheated on her husband, whatever. But the point is, what was the famous line? For he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. What happened? They all fucking left. I'm surprised it made it. I'm surprised that line, that scene, made it in the New Testament. I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. All I can figure is some bishops in the round table in Constantine's little Council of Nicaea, which continued after that. That was the first council, which we all know by name, the Council of Nicaea. But there was another council, I forgot its name, that went on for years, of them deciding what would go into the Bible, what they call canonization, which means we have approved it. It's our approved story. By misogynistic men who hate women, who always hated it. I mean, literally, he had problems. You think this is a healthy man? And we've literally taken our entire belief system on a man who fundamentally hated women? What are we doing? But let me continue. And actively, this is the part, actively hunted down Jesus's disciples. So the very people that loved and had spoken with Jesus and understood his connection with Mary of Magdalene, who understood Mother Mary, who understood Joseph, basically all the people that were the intimates of Jesus Christ, he actively hunted down, dragging them to prisons. Acts 8:1 through 3. I'm sorry, my pastors out there. Are you for real? Are you for real? So now you know why they'll never believe what they see. You can actually, it's not AI. You know what's being shown is what's being shown. In color, in 4K, in action, it's happening. And somebody said something very intelligent, very intelligent. I've actually reposted their videos. One person, I'm trying to remember who, they don't want the world to be better. They want it to completely collapse because they're looking for some kind of salvation. The rapture, which we all know was written by Thomas, I think his name was Thomas Darby, and Cecil Schofield. That's why in September of last year, the 23rd and 24th, people were waiting for the rapture. But God forbid they should, say, Mary Magdalene was not a harlot. God forbid that would ever be, because we all know that. Pope Benedict and Pope Gregory, it was Pope Gregory that first said she was a harlot. And Pope Benedict continued that, and it was never removed. Never. Even to this day. It's the 21st century, and it's still there. So, my female friends, my divine masculines, do you understand? You can put literally a fact in front of a person, and they will not believe their eyes. They will not believe their sense. They won't. They'll turn around to ask the whatever leader of that system what they should believe. Swear to God. And if that's not a cult, I don't know what is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to say. To me, it breaks my heart, because there are children. They trap you in fear of hell if you don't follow what they taught. Exactly. Does that make sense? So it's heartbreaking to me, because there are children who, like you, will go through the system, and they will be highly psychic, because the new children being born right now, the souls, these ancient souls being born right now, are massively powerful. And if I hope to God they make it, I'm going to believe that they will. Some of you had to be born through this machine to understand what you had to go through to leave it, and why you left it. This is why you need to fucking speak out, because I don't have that experience. Thank the fuck God. I wasn't raised. Was I around these religions, these fractal religions of Christianity? Yeah, I was. Okay. But very, very early on, like I remember reading a book when I was about 8 years old on the Huguenot slaughter in Paris. It was a book for children, believe it or not. I mean, it's like, fuck. The French don't fuck around when they have you read books on certain subjects. But it was I read it in French, and it was about the Huguenots war in Paris, and it was bad. It was really, really a slaughter. It was bad. For no other reason than they were Huguenots. And it marked me. Don't get me wrong. I still walked into the the Notre Dame. Still walked there. And yet, even though I loved the beauty and this and that, of course I did. I could never really get into it. And my parents were not. My parents were spiritual. They were not religious. Thank fucking God. I think now I know. I mean, there's so many reasons why I picked them as my parents, but there are children that are going to be 15, 16 years old, probably turning 15, 16 years old right now in these machines. And it's a machine. It's a mental machine. You who have walked that path, you who basically hacked yourself out of this mindset, you need to be doing lives. You need to be talking about it. And I don't mean lives where you have a panel of fucking idiots trying to convince you you're wrong. I mean, just like me. You're not here to fucking debate. I'm not going to debate fucking human rights, control and subjugation of the feminine sex. It's not a debate. I give a fuck what your opinion is, honestly. My little corrupt misogynistic males, I don't give a fuck what you think. Keep going. You're not my concern. I'm trying to help people who are on the threshold of their own liberation. And I'm literally a teardrop. I'm going to say it like that. A teardrop in the ocean of consciousness. And we need more of you who have gone through this indoctrination to say something. I don't care if it's a post or you got a little pictures and you talk about how you got the fuck out of this mindset. And how you felt when you were 15, 16, questioning it, and how you felt inside. How did it make you feel inside? Because I can't speak of that. I have empathy, but I can only imagine that you might have hated your bodies. I remember reading the book Carrie by Stephen King. I read the book. Fuck the movie. The movie's shit compared to the book. The book, the psychological mindfuck of Carrie, who's a psychic. Go read it again if you've never read it. You should read it because then you'll understand these zealots and how they think. I'll never forget how her breasts were described by her mother as dirty pillows. I'll never forget that. Never. And I read that book when I was about 14 years old. I read a lot of books at the age of between 14 and, well, I've always been a huge copious reader, but by 14 and 16, I'm reading pretty, the levels of books from spirituality, reincarnation, Ruth Montgomery, Rampati Lapsang, and then books like that. Audrey Rose was another book I read. The Reincarnation of Peter Proud. The original book written by Richard Matheson, Somewhere in Time, about breaching realities and timelines. I mean, I actually remember where I bought that book, that particular book. I read. I didn't want that book to ever end. I kept reading it again and again and again. My point is, we have the knowledge. We know the truth. It's all inside of us, but we have to share it with each other, or else we're going to go crazy. There are people cracking up right now trying to make sense. Do you understand? And you're not fucking saying a fucking thing. So say something, for Christ's sake. Look at me. Look, I got 4 people, the same fucking... So say something, for Christ's sake. Look at me. Look, I got 4 people, the same fucking 4 people to talk to. And I appreciate this, but say something. How did you get out of this fucking machine? What happened to you that made you get out of this machine? You know what I'm saying? When people have to question where they are going after dying is so sad. Like my mom, it was scary to break free given the fear talk. But what did they feel like in your body? Like literally write it down and then record yourself reading it and then send it off to YouTube. I would go to YouTube. I would go to TikTok. Fuck Instagram. Fuck Meta. Okay? But I would do that. I would actually send that information out. So does that make sense? But say something. Don't say it to me. Say it to the world. I was raised this way, and these were my belief systems, and this is what I was taught, and I'm not ashamed. I am so proud of myself. Say it. I'm so proud of myself that I was able to literally break myself free. And I was shaking inside breaking free. I thought maybe I'd go to hell, but at this point, what are you going to lose? I mean, hell? You are in hell. When your mind is literally lashing at you, you're already in hell. That mind is either your peaceful place or your hellish place. Your mind. And your mind creates reality. This is scientifically proven. I've always wondered about Paul. You know, I was more interested in the positivity of looking into Yeshua and finding out about his beloved Mary of Magdalene, because for me, she's my queen. She's my priestess. They have accomplished so much. They gave us a template of what it was to be a divine masculine and feminine. And what's interesting, I just reposted that too. There's a female Irish scholar. I guess she's a scholar. I don't know. I'm going to say she's a scholar. I'm a scholar. But anyway, guess what? She was talking about in Ireland, before the new religion came with St. Patrick and all that debacle. Guess what she did? What they did. Every year and a day, that's apparently was, and I was telling this to Andromeda Flame, we talked about this in depth, that every year, a year and a day, you could remarry or divorce. You could remarry and divorce. Women were equal and celebrated as men. This was also true in the in Britain, in other England. This was also true in Gaul. Why do you think we had Boudica? What do you think, Boudica came out of nowhere? Boudica was raised as a woman of equality and power. And when the Romans came to do what they did with her and her daughters, she fucking rose an army, okay? So Boudica was a badass, equal, and she was seen by men, her men, as a powerhouse, as an equal, to be respected equally, to lead armies. You understand? All right? So where do we go here? Where do we go? And there's a lot of clues, which I mentioned again and again, but this I think was important to share with you. And I'm going to pull a card, an oracle card, on what the message is on this, because honestly, my level of patience with this machine, I'm getting sick of the machine. So now, let me ask you this. Did I answer, through reading this, did I answer the question as to why people don't believe their own eyes? This should be like so obvious at this point now. Does anybody have a question as to, as to this truth? Does anybody have a question? Or I really don't care if anyone has a pushback, because I don't give a shit. It's fucking documented. So, but he hunted Jesus's devotees and kidnapped the religion. That's how I'm going to say it. And I am so fucking, I knew he was a bastard, but I didn't know to what level. Now I do. And so I'm going to pull a card from the Keepers of the Light. Thank you, Ago. Thank you. And I will have this on YouTube. So follow me on YouTube, please. And I'm going to pick the card. What do they need to know? What is the message for these people here listening to me? Mercury, open communication. Get a weight off your chest. Speak up with love and be heard. Next card, please. White Eagle, ancestor spirit. Connect to your lineage. A family wound or pattern can be healed. Let me explain to you this way. Mercury is an obvious explanation. I don't have to explain Mercury and what that means. White Eagle, ancestor spirit. It is not just the ancestor you embody in this incarnation, my friend. It's the ancestors where I was a nun in 16th century Italy, in a nunnery, being forced to fast. I'll never forget that. I brought this up again and again. I'm forced to fast. I'm in a cold cell, stone room with, do you mean like there's nothing on the walls? There's nothing. And my window overlooks a vegetable garden. I'm drinking water. I'm fasting. I've been forced to fast. I'm locked in my cell. They used to call these rooms cells, not a room, cells. I'm locked in my cell. My room overlooks and my windows over, and I can smell the radish, the carrots, and the leeks. I'm so fucking hungry. What did I do? Question? Did I question the Bible? Is that why I was in that cell being forced to fast on water? And for how long for me to be that hungry? 10 days? 15 days? So the white eagle ancestor spirit is about a family wound or pattern that can be healed. Now, let's continue. The Miriam, sacred vision. Choose to forgive in order to heal. See the light in all. Remember that love has no boundaries. And the final card, Serapis Bay, Ascension. There you go. It's amazing, isn't it? Every card is telling you what to do. Move into your true self. Rise above the darkness. The light is here. That's right. We have access. Do you understand that the reason why the Cathars were slaughtered, the reason why the Knights Templars were slaughtered is because they knew the truth. They knew the truth, and they still held ancient scriptures, okay, written by disciples, okay, copied again and again. And the Roman church hunting them down like fucking rabid dogs. Last card. Thank you. I had this convo with someone and cried because I said there is info non-disclosed. Absolutely. I heard Saul hunted Christians and converted, becoming Paul. You shed light on this. I honestly knew that too, Sherry. But to be honest with you, reading it, the entirety of what this piece of shit did, how dare he have access? So I've been talking to friends, and I'm calling out Aramaic scholars, biblical scholars. We need you, and we need you to work with pure psychics, not assholes who just, selling you $100 candles because you got a curse on your family. Not these real fucking psychics, real healers to download. We need remote viewers. I'm not joking when I say that. Remote viewers to go back to see what happened with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, and to write the Book of Light. The Book of Light. The Old Testament about the creation of our galaxy is written in Sumerian text. Just so you know, I read it a long time ago. I read the book, The 12th Planet. Okay? And I read the beginning of how the planet, our galaxy, was made. It's written in Sumerian. So I don't understand what we're doing here with Adam and Eve and Adam. I'm done. But let's go ahead and read from the book. It's called The Light Worker Oracle by Alana Fairchild. And I'm going to pull a card. Actually, this time you guys can pull a card. You can pick top, bottom, or middle. Top, bottom, or middle. Majority wins. And how many people do I have here? I'm just curious. 5 people. 5 people. But, let's not understand the spiritual psychology of the damage done, that we have a rupture across the country over obvious scenes of injustice. Let's talk about that. But let's not understand the psychology that has burdened this consciousness of me and my soul and yours for over 2,000 years. To me, it starts 3,000 years ago. And you incarnate again and again in this machine of rhetoric. And what do you think happens? What do you think happens to your third eye? Do you really think you can see a fucking thing? You're definitely not going to believe what you see with your own 2 eyeballs. I'll tell you that. So pick top, bottom, or middle. If you don't, I'll pick it myself and go from there because I don't want to waste time. Okay, great. So I'm going to go with top. Karmic clearing. Perfect card. Karmic clearing. Number 5. What is 5 connected to? Well, 5 is connected to Mercury, which is communication. We need to communicate. Stop not speaking your voice. Talk about the trauma of being raised the way we're raised with the religion that was force-fed into you. Spirituality is not New Age. Spirituality is connecting to God. And when you read the Gnostic Gospel by Elaine Pagel, she literally tells you how the Orthodox Church was built. And you should know this. You should. And it's not a hard book to read by no means. I read it in 2 days. It's not a hard book to read at all. It's very simple. So hang on, let me read. Here, karmic. So it's karmic. So it's number 5, karmic clearing. And I skipped it. Hang on, let me see. Where in the hell is it? And then I'm going to read it to you very slowly because I want you to really, really digest. Here we go. Karmic clearing. Let's begin. And what page? It's page 35 in case you have the deck, which is 8, which is karma, just so you know. You are fast outgrowing a level of consciousness to which are attached particular wounds, issues, and struggles. As you outgrow that consciousness, these issues will release their grip on you. You are receiving divine notice that karmic clearing is taking place through a combination of your own efforts and spiritual grace from the heart of the divine. It is time for an old wound to be released once and for all. Karma is not punishment. Karma is essentially our soul's lesson plan for this lifetime carried over from past lifetimes. Let me stop here. I did a whole live on YouTube about the loosh and reincarnation. When you die, and start making plans here. When you die, make sure you understand you don't owe anything and anyone a karmic loop back into 3D. You don't. Now, others will. I'm not kidding. There's some cruelty. So there's some fuckery going on. They're definitely coming back. And not here in a 3D planet. But you have to make the decision, and I'll continue reading in a minute. You have to make the decision that I am good now. I get it. I don't need to experience 120 different ways of the same thing to get 120 different points of views. I get it. I'm good. I'm ready for 5D and beyond. Do you understand? And karmic clearing is making that decision. It's literally sitting in silence or journaling your thoughts as to what you still need to refine. Do it here. Do it now. Do you understand? So you don't get confused in the bardo when you drop your body. I love that term, the bardo. The Buddhists came up with that term, the bardo, which is the journey when the soul dies. Do it here. We're all talking. We're all helping each other to get out of the loosh of 3D incarnations into amnesia again, right? Helping each other to get out of the loosh of 3D incarnations into amnesia again. Right? Karma is essentially our soul's lesson plan for this lifetime carried out over lifetimes. It is the way we grow and develop as a soul, sometimes through challenges and sometimes through blessings. Our positive karma is seen in the skills, talents we have mastered over many lifetimes. Also, when opportunities flow easily and healing happens swiftly, there is a sense of positive karma, an easy grace that effortlessly takes place in your life. This is what happens when we are clear enough of our own past pain to have little resistance between us and the natural flow of life. More challenging karma is revealed in the lessons we're still learning. These usually appear in the guise of painful circumstances or reactions that repeat themselves in our lives. The stronger the soul, the more challenging the lesson it is willing to master this lifetime. As with any education, the higher the level of training, the more demanding the work. When you are working through big challenges, it is often a sign that you are on an advanced spiritual path. Must you always have struggle in your life as an advanced soul? Of course not. As you master your lessons, you will find you develop an ability to live your life more peacefully. However, it would be incorrect to interpret a struggle as a sign that you are not progressing spiritually. That's right. Sometimes the more painful a struggle has been, the more difficult it can be to release that pain and associated memory or scars. The spiritual worlds know you are in need of divine intervention to help clear a pattern that was once painfully lodged in your body, mind, and soul. Enough of the struggle. Divine love now offers healing and freedom. We clear karma by learning to trust and relax, by choosing not to punish ourselves with shame, guilt, fear, or unworthiness, by continuing to balance our efforts with a surrender to divine grace. We take responsibility for our own healing, doing all that we can, and trusting that the universe will lovingly and effectively handle everything else so that we can progress and succeed. If you have been struggling with a long-term issue, this oracle card comes in a particular sign that the universe wants to step in and assist you. Repeat the invocation below for at least 6 days and nights. Invite this healing blessings of karmic clearing through love into your life. I'm going to give you I'll read it to you in a minute, but honestly, ahom prema, ahom prema, ahom prema. I am divine love. Say that to your chakras. Say that to yourself. Do that. We don't have to complicate shit, but I'll read what she says. Invocation. I call upon the karmic board of ascended beings, angels and guides and holy ones who love me unconditionally and ask for your divine blessing, healing and assistance. Now I open myself up to divine grace, divine love and karmic absolution. I choose to surrender my attachments to the suffering I've experienced. I've learned and have been willing to go through this experience, and yet I am now willing to learn and grow through a higher vibrational experience of love. Through divine authority and my own free will, this karmic clearing manifests now according to the highest law of love. May this blessing reach into the hearts of all beings according to divine compassion, mercy, and grace. So be it. Can I tell you something that's incredible? Is that there are people who are in the religious dogma, in the vortex of religious dogma, who will hear me say this, okay? And who will scoff. What are you scoffing at? What are you scoffing at? You're reading the same little book that has actually harmed people more than helped. You're reading the same little book that had a woman play the tape of a baby crying and asking for just 1 can of formula. Not money, 1 can of formula. 1 can of formula. With a baby crying. With a woman said, I have not fed my baby since last night. I have no money. What are you crying about? Why? Why would you not believe what I just said? Why would you believe the people harassing the monks walking for peace? Why would you believe them? Because they're reading this kind of brainwashing material. Yelling and screaming with bullhorns. Attacking. Spiritually, vocally, verbally attacking the monks. Old, fragile men walking for peace. One monk lost his leg due to a car hitting them as they began their journey. Lost his leg. What is this? Jesus Christ is coming to many of us. And that's why we call him Yeshua, because we want a distance between that name and the name, Yeshua, Isa. Isa, the light of charity, of non-judgment, of divine unconditional love. Unconditional love. The very thing that created us all. The God of 1,000 names, the one who created us all. God, Allah. You understand? So when you tell me that you believe only in that book, and you find out that the founder of that book, the way he basically kidnapped the writings of Yeshua and hunted down Jesus's disciples and stoned a man, the first Christian martyr, stoned him to. I'm sorry. What are we doing here? Where's the common sense in people? Where's the common sense? Common decency, common humanity. So when you see people who don't believe what they see with their 2 eyes on a video, now you know why. They can't even fucking mindfully understand and explore fucking common sense. They can't even figure it out. And this is not complex. You read how Paul began this structured system of oppression, and you go, and apparently, back when the Cathars were alive, they must have still had ancient scriptures. You know how shit works. Have you ever seen a building that's about 150, 200, 300 years old, and it gets torn down? It'll never be remembered. No one will ever know there was a building once that stood there. Same with a tree. Similarly, that's what happened to scriptures. There were people who had written literally scribe. I mean, come on. Are we supposed to think they were all illiterate? Come on, let's wake up here. Okay, you got Mother Mary, who's a high priestess. You've got Mary of Magdalene, who comes from what I've always heard, a well-to-do family. They're not broke. She studied temple priestess stuff, whatever that means. Yeshua studied the language of India so he could read whatever the language was. I'm trying to remember the name of that particular language, but this is where he read the Vedas. He taught himself how to read the Vedas. Oh, let's not believe in that. The man was not an illiterate. Okay, he wasn't making rocking chairs. Okay, I seriously doubt he was a carpenter. I seriously doubt he was ever part of any of that. In fact, one of the stories goes that he actually ran away from home to go and meet his fate. I've read about that. You can look it up under my playlist in YouTube of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. There's a whole playlist. Tons and tons of lives have I done, reading and reading and reading to you. Because I wanted to understand, how the fuck did we get here? I'm not kidding. Where you and I can see the same shit and turn around and in shock going, I don't understand. How could they're literally denying their eyes. Literally. So that if a priest, pastor told them the sky is purple, they would have to, and they would successfully convince themselves that the sky is purple, not blue. Swear to God, this is what we're talking about here. And it's interesting too, because I remember my father was terrified. He wasn't afraid of anything, but you know what he was afraid of? Cults. Hated cults. I'll never forget. I think it was 1979 or 1980. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll never forget living in New York City. My dad's a World War II vet. Fought for this country, for the freedom that we're supposed to enjoy on the European stage, my father. And on TV is Reverend Mooney, marrying 500 people who had never previously to that day met. Married them. 500. I think it was a baseball stadium or some kind of stadium. And I watched it on TV being actually filmed. I'll never forget that. So I really viscerally, like Osho's another level of cult. Osho. Everyone loves to quote Osho. How about quoting Rumi? Why don't you quote somebody with brains? Rumi, not Osho. Look at Osho's eyes. They're dead. There's nothing there. Let's be very careful with the nature of cults and how they are birthed. And let's understand that when hate or control or desexualizing people or over-sexualizing people, either one, it's wrong. Period. It's wrong. When they ask you to give your last dime, it's wrong. It's wrong. There's nothing here. And so the concept of discernment, the concept of believing your eyes. Now do you understand why most of you don't even believe what your downloads? If you've been taught not to believe what you see, and if you've been taught to literally give your free will and mind to a religious leader, then how the fuck are you gonna handle your third eye opening? How are you gonna handle oracle dreams? How are you gonna handle telepathy? How are you gonna handle remote viewing? How are you gonna handle psychic powers? How? If you've been trained never to even trust your own two eyeballs. I mean, much less fucking reading and literally digesting the truth of what you're reading. Or making decisions like, do you understand comparative religion, comparative literature? When I was in high school, I was lucky to have an incredible teacher. She taught me how to do comparative literature. You know, I read the Tales of Canterbury with The Tempest by William Shakespeare. The concept of somehow finding things that you could weave in and out in an essay. These mental exercises, I don't know. I may not speak scholarly, but I do know common sense. And the exercise of teaching people how to discern, dissect, excavate, question. If your child is not growing up questioning every fucking thing, you're not a good parent. You are not a good parent. Your child should... I remember when my son wanted I don't know, a Lego set or an ice cream, I'd have him argue his point as to why this was important. I'm not joking. At the age of 6, I started training him, and it's a training of questioning and arguing why, negotiating at the age of 6. Because I wasn't just going to hand him whatever. He needed to mentally do gymnastics to learn how to think. Does that make sense? And why? So he could question authority. So he could question my authority. Who the fuck kind of parent am I to want a little slave child? No, I didn't want a slave child. I wanted a thinker. I wanted to grow a thinking man who would excavate, question, dissect, and resolve an answer that might even change 10 years later because of his own evolution. These are things that are impacting our people now. That's why people are not questioning systems of their own oppression. Do you understand? And it starts with religion. And it starts with schools that want only one fucking answer instead of multiple thinking answers. Tests should be essays. Not A, B, C, D, or all the above. It should be essays. And the grade should be based on the cleverness of the answer. The cleverness, the depth, the empathy, the logic, the passion, whatever, however. Do you understand? And we've been told that we don't want thinkers. Does that make sense? And God knows this is true. Blind obedience, a few people are saying. Exactly, blind obedience. Okay? So once you understand how do you understand? I never knew this shit. Don't feel bad. I've been here decades in this incarnation. Decades. I remember when I first found out that Allah in Aramaic, I found this out about, I'd say 6 months ago, but one day I did a live on it, 2.5 months ago, on Allah, which in Aramaic means the God. And when I started reading Jesus in Aramaic by Neil Klotz, I was like, why weren't we taught this? What? I don't understand. Why weren't we taught this? The God, Allah. That's what it means in Aramaic. So Yeshua, speaking Aramaic, would have said, when he referred to God, he would have said Allah. I swear to God. I'm not making this shit up. How could theologians not teach this and not want to unify people? Why are we allowing people to say, my God? I actually correct people. What do you mean your God? You mean God. The God, the one of 1,000 names. We have called this incredible mind, spirit, who had the desire to create us. Do you understand it took desire? So we need to understand the difference between wrong desire, lust, casinos, Las Vegas, bullshit, private jets, trillions of dollars in our bank account, for walking, stepping over a homeless person while we have $1 trillion or $1 billion or even $1 million. Those are wrong desires. Right desires. What is right desires? Well, God had the right to, he created us. He created galaxies. He created sentient beings. He, she. You don't think God can incarnate as anything God wishes? It's kind of like the Prince and the Pauper. You don't think that ever happened? Anne Rice did an incredible book. It's called Memnoch the Devil. Memnoch the Devil. She actually went back into Catholicism and became a devout Catholic, believe it or not. Her son is gay, by the way, on the side note. And I'm not sure how this worked in her mind, but that's what she did. Who knows? She had lost the love of her life, her husband, to cancer of some kind. I forgot what it was. But my point is, she did write about Jesus as a boy in Egypt. I never bought the book, so I can't speak on it, but I did read Memnoch the Devil by Anne Rice. And I can assure you, it is an interesting treaty because it's kind of like philosophical, but in a weird, irreverent way. And I'll tell you what it's about. It's literally about the devil, Memnoch, coming to Lestat, a vampire and him talking about Jesus. And it's absolutely, in a way, a fucked up point of view, but it's an interesting point of view because it's questioning the veracity. There are a lot of people that think Jesus Christ is not real. It never happened. It's a mythology, and I don't believe that. And I don't believe that not because it's not possible that with all of our training and teaching seeping into some of our consciousness that we couldn't create an egregore called Jesus Christ, just on the side note. But I do know, and I don't know why, that for many of us, we didn't ask for visions of him, and yet he came. And not just him, Mary of Magdalene came. And all over the world, women and men are talking about, in particular women, are talking about meeting with Mary of Magdalene, or meeting with both, or meeting with him, just Yeshua, Isa. And the question is, why? Because one of the things they talked about is that, he would come back as a lion. Well, here we are. Aren't we the lions roaring and saying, this is a lie, this is his truth? So they talked about hair of wool, feet of bronze. Let's go back to that. White hair. It's all fucking made up. We have to have a lot more respect for us, because I'm going to be very arrogant. You're going to think I'm very arrogant, but I'm irreverent. We are smarter, more spiritually powerful than the people who wrote this. Do you get what I'm saying? I need you to be more confident in your innate power, because you're not going to do it to subjugate, to hunt down, or stone disciples of Yeshua. You're going to do it to bring clarity and unity, which is what Yeshua was talking about. And how would he be made up if they have written at the time? Again, remember, in 1959 is when the Dalai Lama, who was a teenage boy, was hustled out of Tibet because the Chinese armies were coming. Okay, just so you know. But in 1951, an admiral saw the Himmas document that showed your Jesus Christ was here. Elizabeth Kasparia was a woman who traveled almost 1 year. Took her 1 year, her and another woman who was very wealthy, and her husband. 1 year to make it there. And there were multiple, and I've read this before, that's why I'm not going to repeat it again and again and again, but 5 people saw the truth. And I'm sure there were other people who never mentioned it because they, but I do know this, and this is, when this came out in 1929, when there were 2 men, again, I forgot one, but one of them was something Ananda, he was a Swami. But when Nicholas Notovich, who's the most famous one, he's the first one who recorded, I saw this, I actually took photos of this, and my idiot person exposed the plates. He had plates, and there was heavy backpacking and all kinds of shit. So Elizabeth Kaspari actually journals her journey. It took 1 fucking year to get up to those mountains, okay? My point, let me go back to Nicholas Notovich. When Nicholas Notovich first wrote his book, he was told he had bishops, he had priests coming to him in the 1880s or whatever it was. I forget the date, 1887, something like that. But when he exposed this, that what he saw, he was told to stand down by the Catholic Church. He was told, he was visited. And I read to you in the 13th century, probably, I just realized this. In the 13th century is when the Cathars are finally slaughtered. The Knights Templars are still alive, but they've completely slaughtered men, women, and children. And they would have had probably writings that Yeshua was in Tibet. Why am I saying that? Because in the 13th century, there is a monk that travels the roads that would have probably taken him a year, maybe a year and a half, to the Himmas temple. Why would he go there? Why would any Catholic priest, bishop, anyone, why would they go there? For what purpose? Unless they were wanting to see what this was about. It must have been heard. People knew. And they made sure that they slaughtered everyone. And then the rest, the 5 people I mentioned, Nicholas Notovich and the rest, Elizabeth Kaspari and the rest, and an admiral, by the way, she didn't give a fuck if she was going to be laughed at. She didn't give a fuck. But the other 2 men, Nicholas Notovich, was destroyed, laughed at. So why do you think people would put their fucking reputation, especially in the 1800s, 19th century? And if you read Martin Bernal's books, he was a Rutgers University Jewish professor who wrote Black Athena, volume 1, 2, and 3, which they're so scholarly. I've only read volume 2, to be honest, because I was interested in certain things about the Carthaginians, and I could go on, but that was the reason. And how he wrote about and I'm going to say it, the whitewashing and the absolute agenda of the 19th century, scholars, archaeologists, theologians, and Egyptologists. There was an agenda. Okay? So something in all of us is waking up, and we want the truth. Why? Because the truth will set you free. Who said that? The truth shall set you free. Who said that? The truth shall set you free. And why will it set you free? Because then you're no longer controlled by dogma. You know? And so I'm not probably right now on the positive. I know a friend of mine is telling me to do more lives that are going to be positive and kumbaya and this and that. But I understand in my heart and my soul that before we can do more kumbayas, we need to know what happened to us in every incarnation, whether we were shepherds, farmers, foot soldiers, warriors, whatever in the last 2,000 years. What happened to us? What happened that we're afraid of our own psychic powers? What happened that if you see me lifting paper with just my hand, not touching it, just literally mentally making the wind come, the rain come. My God, the Native Americans could make rain come. And I'm not kidding. It wasn't a ceremony. It was actually done. Listen to where it comes from. Jesus tells his followers that abiding in his words leads to knowing the truth, which brings liberation primarily from spiritual bondage. But guess what Paul must have written? To sin, leading to deeper spiritual freedom and transformation. Not just freedom, and this is from Google, by the way, I'm just letting you know. So the truth will set you free is a famous quote from the Bible, John 8:3-2. By the way, here we go again with 13. 13 is death, transformation. The truth refers to the divine reality revealed through Jesus, encompassing his teachings. But the thing is, you have to go find the teachings. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The teaching is not in that book. It's part of it. I'm shocked that they allowed Mary Magdalene to actually see him rise from the crypt. That's like shocking. And that's not what happened. I can tell you. Mother Mary and Mary of Magdalene, who were high priestess, taught in sound frequency and healing at the temples of Isis, which if you look at 430, when was this? This was the last time there was a massive savage riot again in Alexandria, in Egypt, for 400, I think it was 450 AD, where they sacked the library, calling it pagan teachings. And for a long time, I kept telling you guys to watch the movie. Oh my God, I forgot the movie now. Fuck, my brain just went left instead of right. But it's about Hypatia. This is when women were still allowed. She was teaching mathematics, astronomy and mathematics. And the mob went and destroyed her physically. If you watch the movie, let me see what it was with Rachel Weisz. I'm going to look it up because you need to watch this movie. This movie, because actually I have a past life there, believe it or not. And for almost 40 years, I was haunted by the images of this past life as I was a high priestess myself in a temple, and I knew it was in Egypt, and I saw this mob of people. I was it's a long story. I'm not going to get into the savagery of it, but I lost my life, and a lot of high priests and priestesses and librarians were destroyed, physically torn bit to bit. Hang on, let me look this up real quick. I'm going to tell you the movie. I can't believe it. I'm always mentioning this movie, and Rachel Weisz's movies. Let me look it up real quick. I'll be able to find it real quick. Hang on, okay? Bear with me. I'm going to give you the movie. This is like, and of course it's at the bottom of the fucking list, isn't it? Hang on, let me see. There are two movies that you need to look at, actually. One is called The Fountain. It's called The Fountain. And the other one, but I'm looking for, that'd be funny if I can't find it here. I would lose my mind. Hang on. You gotta be fucking kidding me. So The Fountain is important. Agora, that's what it's called. It was made in 2009. It's called Agora. You're not gonna have, you better have a comedy or something afterwards, because the way it's insane. And you'll see the librarians, the keepers of knowledge, literally going, yes, this scroll, not that scroll. No, take that. No, don't forget that. And they're trying to get everything out of the library before the Christian hordes, the madness mob of zealots, destroy its people. The keepers of knowledge is what I'm going to call them, and its content. Okay? Brainwashing is a real thing. All right? And this is set in around 450 or thereabouts AD. And let me read you what it says about the movie, because I really, really fucking want you to, I really want you to see it. Okay. The uses historical fiction to highlight relationships between religion and science amidst the decline of Greco-Roman polytheism and the Christian. They're so full of shit. Oh my God. Again, this is Google. Yeah, thank you, Google, for being such a pussy. Okay, let me continue. Between religious and science amidst the decline of Greco-Roman polytheism and the Christianization of the Roman Empire. The title of the film takes its name from the Agora, a public gathering place in ancient Greece similar to the Roman Forum. She was a teacher. She was a professor. And she was teaching, like I said, astronomy and mathematics, and it's based on Hypatia, who they did awful things to. And in Alexandria. Okay, so let me tell you when it happened. During Lent, in March of 1415 CE, a fanatical mob of anti-pagan Christians led by a church reader named Peter dragged Hypatia from her chariot into the Caesareum, then serving as a church. There, according to Socrates Scholasticos, they stripped her and scraped her skin with sharp shells until she lost her life. You're not going to see that scene. You're going to see something else. Okay? You're going to see something else at the ending. But what the fuck? Mathematician and philosopher is killed in Alexandria. And they all of them say, okay, fanatical mob, anti-pagan Christianity. If you listen to my entire life, you're going to see that I've been talking about, what is it? Isn't it interesting that for paganism to be called paganism, right? Paganism equals women's rights. Literally, paganism said, you are my equal. So technically, Yeshua would be a pagan. Technically. Because he was certainly a feminist, for the lack of a better term. I don't like that term in particular, because I'm more of a human rights. I'm all about equality of male and female, equality in all aspects, knowing that souls have incarnated as women, men, and so forth. But let me read to you about Hypatia, because Agora, the movie I want you to watch, is going to fuck you up. So let's read all of it. Shall we? Enjoy it. Sit back. Story time. Ancient Greek philosophy moved towards a greater emphasis on science and mathematics after the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE. His empire was divided among his generals, and Ptolemy Soter established a dynasty of Greek-speaking kings in Egypt and its capital at the still unfinished city of Alexandria, where the western branch of the Nile River empties into the Mediterranean Sea. He also founded the Museum of Alexandria, which was similar to a modern research university and lasted for 700 years. Scholars from all over the Greek-speaking world, that's a lie, and I'm going to tell you why. The Alexandria Library, that we call Alexandria Library, there was a library before that. Why do I know that? Because before there was a Ptolemy line, there was the dynasties of Akhenaten, for example, Tutankhamun, for example, and they had their libraries. And Herodotus and others went to Egypt to study from the priests, the monks, and the high priestesses there. And that's a fact. And they brought a lot of this knowledge back to the Greeks, just so you know. But let's continue. Like I said, you need to know your shit. You need to, like when ChatGPT tells you one answer, fucking question it. When anything gives you one answer, question it. The first answer is sometimes not the right answer. Believe it or not, I know this from experience. But let's continue. Scholars from all over the Greek-speaking world were invited to join the museum on the condition that they would deposit their scrolls and manuscripts in its library. It is highest point included some 600,000 volumes. Among its greatest mathematicians and scientists were Euclid, Aristarchus of Samos, Apollonius of Perga, Diphontus, Hipparchus, and the astronomer Ptolemy. Hypatia was one of the last significant mathematicians associated with the Alexandria Museum and the earliest known woman mathematician and astronomer. By her time, Alexandria was the third largest city in the Roman Empire, having been conquered by Julius Caesar some 4 centuries earlier. The museum had diminished in importance, many of its books having been burned by Roman soldiers, and there were separate schools for Jews, pagans, and Christians. Although Hypatia's original writings have not survived, she is known from letters that she received from her student Cineas of Serani, and from a reference in the Historia Ecclesiastique, 5th century, Ecclesiastic History, 1844, of Socrates Scholasticus. She was born around 370 CE, estimated range from an earlier as 355, based on the fact that Cineas studied under her to 390 to 395 when she was an established scholar. Hypatia's father, Theon of Alexandria, was a member of the museum and a prominent teacher of mathematics and astronomy. His writings describe a solar and a lunar eclipse he predicted at Alexandria in 364 CE. He is best known for his students' commentaries on Euclid's work on geometry and optics, and on Ptolemy's works on astronomy. But he also wrote poetry and interpretations of omens. Omens, my friend, what do you think that means? Psychic powers, oracle dreams, things of that nature. Let's continue. Theon raised Hypatia to be strong in both mind and body. He taught her mathematics and astronomy, so he saw his daughter as an equal, as well as the arts, literature, speech, philosophy, and such disciplines as swimming, horseback riding, and mountain climbing. She eventually surpassed her father's mathematical skills. Did you hear that? It's called a pagan religion, by the way, just in case you didn't hear that. What this man was doing with his daughter is called paganism, just so you understand. But let's continue, because I find this fascinating. Although Hypatia was considered to be both bright and beautiful, she was also known for prudence and self-control, and avoided the meritable expectation of her time in favor of scholarship. Did you hear that? She didn't want to get married. She wanted to be a scholar. She was soon recognized as a gifted scholar, and by 390 CE, she was well established as a teacher. By 400, she became the salaried head of the Neoplatonistic school, where she emphasized on Platonic, meaning Plato, philosophical ideas, supported her interest in gifts in mathematics. She is thought to have assisted her father in writing an expanded version of Euclid's Stoicia, compiled 300 BCE and Elements 1570, which was the only known Greek text of this import synthesis of Greek geometry until the discovery of an earlier one in the Vatican in the late 19th century. She's also assisted him in his commentary of Ptolemy's influential astronomical treatise Mathematique Synthetique 150 CE. Hypatia's students were aristocratic young men from Egypt, Cyrene, Libya, Syria, and as far away as Constantinople, now Istanbul, Turkey. Although she was pagan, her students were both pagans and Christians, and many of them became important civil and ecclesiastical leaders. Some continued to look to her for guidance for many years after studying with her. A long correspondence with Cyrenius of Cyrene lasted even beyond his consecration in 1410 as a bishop of Ptolemaic by Theophilus, the patriarch of Alexandria. His letters show that she had an extensive knowledge of Greek philosophy and literature, as well as mathematics and science. He's often asked for her advice on his own writings and even sought her political influence on occasions. The Byzantine church historian Socrates Scholaticus wrote that her knowledge exceeded all other contemporary philosophers, and there is general agreement that she surpassed her father in mathematics and astronomy. Did you hear that? So even a bishop of the Catholic Church sought her wisdoms and her extensive knowledge. We call that paganism because God forbid, right? God forbid. God forbid. Let's continue. So we went from Paul, right, telling women that they should shut the fuck up and be silent, all right? We went from this, her father Theon teaching her all and surpassing him, right, to Paul telling women to shut the fuck up and be silent. But let's continue because let's have fun here since this is paganism. Let's have fun. In addition to her collaborations with her father, Theon, Hypatia is known to have written several works on mathematics and astronomy that have not survived. Well, we wonder why, right? Her most important work was the new field of algebra, expanding and commenting on the 3rd century work of Diophantus of Alexandria on indeterminate equations with multiple solutions and quadratic equations. She also wrote a treatise of planetary motions entitled Astronomical Canon and treatise on the conics of Apollonius, which developed Apollonius' 3rd century geometry of the curves formed by the interaction of a plane with a cone. Her interest in scientific instruments is clear from some of Cineas' letters. In one, he inquires about the construction of a hydroscope for measuring the density of liquids. In another, he asks about the construction of an astrolabe for measuring the position of stars and planets. She is also credited with an apparatus for distilling seawater. But she was a pagan. Let's continue. By the time of Hypatia, Christianity had become the official religion of the Roman Empire. As Christianity became established in Alexandria at the end of the 4th century CE, rioting often erupted between those of opposing religions. In the year 1412, Cyril, later Saint Cyril, became Patriarch of Alexandria and began a campaign opposing schematics. Christian groups and driving many Jews from the city. This led to hostility between Cyrus and Orestes, the Roman prefect of Egypt and a good friend of Hypatia. 500 monks from the Nitrian desert assembled to defend Cyril of Alexandria, and one of them threw a stone that wounded Orestes. The monk was arrested and tortured, then died, but Cyril hailed him as a martyr. Because of her friendship with Orestes, Hypatia came to be viewed by some Christians as not only a pagan, but a philosopher, but also an obstacle to friendship between Patriarch and the prefect. During Lent in March, and this is but let me read it again. During Lent in March of 1415 CE, a fanatical mob of anti-pagan Christians led by a church leader named Peter dragged Hypatia from her chariot into the Caesareum, then serving as a church. There, according to Socrates, Scholasticus, they stripped her. Do you understand what that means? They stripped her nude and scraped her skin with sharp shells until she died. Then dismembered her body and burned it to ashes in a place called Sinaron. Many of her students then left to study in Athens, which gained a reputation in mathematics by 420. The Alexandria Neoplatonic school continued until the Arab invasions of 642. When the remaining books in the library were used to fool the city's baths for 6 months, probably among them were the works of Hypatia. Did you hear that? The baths, they would burn big stoves for common to heat the water. So they used the books as fuel. So the significance of what I'm reading to you, do you understand? Do you understand that this energy of brutality is cultish? There's something wrong. It's like, how can you not think this is wrong? Hypatia was the only female scientist of the ancient world whose life is well documented, and perhaps the most famous of all women scientists until Marie Curie. As one of the last pagan scientists in the Western world, her death also came in the last years of the Roman Empire. Her life and death marked the beginning of the end of ancient Greek science, and more particularly the end of the Alexandria tradition that had flourished in its museum and libraries for some 700 years. Because of her qualities of beauty and intellect, she has been romanticized in historical and fictional accounts. I'm going to read more. Oh, by the way, there is apparently a biography of her by Margaret Alick, A-L-I-C, Hypatia's Heritage. And it was published in 1986 when we still had brains. And there's a lot of other books. There's another one in Harvard University Press, Hypatia of Alexandria by Maria Disleka. There's a few books. But let me also read to you. Hang on. I'm going to look up Aspasia. Aspasia was a courtesan. She was a hooker, okay, to put it right. And let me tell you about her, because this is important. Aspasia of Miletus was a prominent and influential woman in classical Athens, known as the intellectually gifted companion of statesman Pericles, who was considered the first lady of Athens, a muse for philosophers like Socrates. Not a muse, she taught Socrates. She taught Socrates his philosophy. And if you know anything about Socrates, you know what a badass he was. He was a badass. She was an influence in, she was what they call hetera. Hetera is Greek for geisha. Okay? And the story tells of the hetera in ancient Athens. This is when there was like a window of time where for 100 years men actually sought women sexually. There was no pedastry in that time, just so you know, on the side note. And if you know anything about some level of Greek history, you'd understand what I'm just saying. But I'm not going to go too much into it because it's kind of vile. But when men, for that 100-year window is what I'm going to call it, and I could be wrong, and feel free to correct me, I will totally correct it on a footnote after this is recorded. But she taught, like I said, Socrates, and key figures in political and intellectual circles, despite facing criticism as a hetera, an educated courtesan. Now, these courtesans were picked for their beauty, but how would they know they were beautiful? Because most of them were the issue of unmarried women, noble women giving birth to girls, baby girls. And these baby girls were brought to a place where these girls were basically thrived under the care of a housing system, whatever, orphanage. But the orphanage wasn't an orphanage the way you think. These young girls at a very young age began a training of learning philosophy, music, singing, poetry, dancing, and lovemaking. Okay, all of these things were taught as they got older, and they were released into the world to become the companions of very powerful warriors, statesmen, and so forth. She was renowned for her sharp intellect, rhetorical skills, lying, okay, lying. But what's clever is, as I read this, I saw her kind of winking at one of these statesmen and kind of just turning bullshit into gold, right? And kind of winking, going, yeah, try to out rhetoric or outsmart me on this particular rhetoric that I'm laying on your on the table here. And she was an influence on Pericles' famous oratory through historical records or filtered through ancient writers, some of whom depicted her negatively. Of course, a woman with power. And again, remember, she was beautiful and smart. Now, what did we all grow up with throughout the centuries? Look pretty, shut the fuck up. It's like, and now we know who kind of started that. Paul. But who started Paul to be such a misogynist? And that's the question for you. That's your job. You all have AI. You all have Google. You all have Yahoo. You all have DuckDuckGo. Do your research. You should research. Where did this come from? Like, when did we lose our right to be seen as equal? Does that make sense? Because honestly, what are we doing here? And this depiction of my Yeshua and Mary of Magdalene is what you see in this image. This is my Mary and my Yeshua. And he doesn't look like a Norwegian. By no stretch of the imagination does he look Norwegian. Right? Nor does she. And to be honest, if I was to say anything, I'd say probably even darker than this. Definitely darker than this. Why? Well, why? Because they're Semitic, for Christ's sake. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because do you see how we've ripped and shredded the truth? Does it matter? I did a live where I was looking at, I was talking about how the monks who walked for peace were treated. And everyone's like, yeah, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. Wouldn't it be funny if one of those monks was Jesus? Wouldn't that be funny? Who the fuck are we to not... What do we know? What do we know? When Paul hijacked the truth that Yeshua spoke, and some people think he lost his life, and other people feel like maybe he didn't. I remember when The Last Temptation of Christ came out, the movie, The Last Temptation of Christ. Here, let me look it up for you. Last Temptation of Christ. People lost their fucking minds. Do you know what it was about? It was about Christ on the cross thinking about what it would have been like to have children with Mary of Magdalene, to make love to her too. They lost their fucking minds. People were picketing this movie. When did it come out? Hang on. The Last Temptation of Christ. That's what it's about. Hang on. It came out in 1988. No, hang on. That's not possible. I don't believe that for 1 second. That is not when it came out. That's actually not true at all. Hang on for a quick second. Let me see, because The Last Temptation of Christ, the movie. Hang on, okay? Because that is not true at all. It did not come then. Let me look. What was the last movie? Hang on, let me look for the dates here. Where the fuck are the dates? This is very strange. This is like, it's saying that the release date was 1981. You know the Mandela effect? I'm just having one right now. And I'll tell you why. Because in 1981, by 1992, 93, and excuse me, 1981, 1982, 93, my father died in 1985. In 1983, I'm visiting my family in Europe. That movie came out before I went to Europe. And yet it's saying it was released in 1988. I'm having a Mandela effect. I'm in shock right now. I'm like, because I didn't expect this. This was not planned, trust me. But I'm sitting back going, what the fuck? That's not when it came out. Because by 1988, I'm living with my husband in San Francisco. And I remember seeing the picketing in New York City. That's what I'm trying to tell you, because I lived there. I lived in New York City. I'm having a Mandela. I'm actually having. I'm like being. Just bear with me. Be patient with me, because right now I'm literally going, what the fuck? There's no way. Holy fuck! I didn't even expect this. By 1988, I'm living in San Francisco with my husband. We're taking walks from North Beach to Haight-Ashbury. And living our lives and working and doing fun things. And there's no way it came out in 1988. It came out at the very latest, at the very latest in 1982, at the latest, if not 1983. And I'll say 1983 because by then I'm in Europe visiting friends and family. By 1984, I'm in Florida. And by 1985, my father dies in California. So it's like, I'm telling you, I'm having a Mandela effect. I'm like, I don't even know what to say right now. All I can say is, holy shit, this is weird. If this is true, and trust me, I'm not even going to question my memory of this at all. There's no question. I'm actually quite famous in my family for having the elephant memory. And I can actually point to everywhere I was within a 6-month window of mistake. And I can tell you that it never came out in 1988. No fucking way. No fucking way. Holy shit. All right, well, there you go. So what does that mean? As I'm sitting here doing this in front of you, it means that we control time, and it means that we can control what reality we want to live. I've done lives on CERN. I've just done lives on a lot of different subjects on YouTube. They're all on YouTube if you want to check them out. Holy shit. I think this is a gift. And the gift is, and you don't have to believe me, I don't give a fuck. Just you try to figure out, I hope to God you were paying attention to, if you were born in the 1960s or 70s, I hope you remember what the hell you were doing. What movie, you know what? I'd like you to all go, here's your homework. I want you to remember a particular time when a movie hit you. A particular movie. And you know exactly where you were. And let's see what dates. Hopefully you were born in the 60s and 70s where you would remember. Because the shift that I'm talking about would have happened in the 80s. So you need to remember where you were in the 80s. Pick a movie or a book that came out that changed your life. Hang on for a quick second. I'm actually going to look at another book that really changed my life. And let's see when they say it came out. I'm just curious at this point. And the book that changed my life, I've had a lot of books change my life, but for me it was The World According to Garp. According to Garp. I just want to see when they say it was published because book release. I'm just going to look. When did it come out? 1978. Okay, well that's correct. 100% correct. John Irving. Okay. So the discrepancies would have happened in the 80s, if I'm correct. Am I correct? Does anybody know about the Mandela effect? This is wild. So sometimes there's a remake of movies that isn't the case here, is it? No, this is about, no, it's not. This is the movie. It's with John Voight. It's not John Voight. Hang on, let me tell you the actor in the movie who played Jesus. Bear with me. I'll tell you the name. William Dafoe. William Dafoe, one of my favorite actors, who was also in The English Patient, another great movie. But no, I remember where I was. See, that's the problem. Martin Scorsese made that movie. They lost their fucking minds. Lost their fucking minds on this movie. Boycotted everywhere. This is so weird. But The World According to Garp would have been made in 1978, and I'll tell you why I know. Because my professor, my teacher, knew John Irving, who came and spoke in our class on the book and other books that he'd written. And I remember that. I thought, wow, you know this guy. This is incredible. Like it was a big deal. For me, it was a big deal. I love writers. I mean, I'm always interested in what, But, so I remember this. And it took... The World According to Garp was pretty mind-blowing. So, anyway, I think I don't know what else. Like, that really... I just got slapped in the back just now. I'm like, I don't know what to say. But anyway, so that was the movie that we were talking about that had people losing their mind. But Aspasia, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Holy fuck. Anyway, yeah, let's call it a day. It's snowing right now. It's beautiful. And any comments or questions? Like, seriously, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I've heard about the Mandela effect, and I do believe people when they say that. It's the first time I've ever personally experienced it. It's like saying, because you have to understand, in the 1970s, I was reading a book, Jesus Lived in India, and it talked about the Shroud of Turin, which has been debunked, and so forth. And it was a very important book for me to read, because it again, it talked about what I think many of us knew, that what he was teaching was very, what you would call New Agey, what I would call Eastern philosophy. And so at the age of 17, I read that book. And again, that book I poured over again and again. I mean, I have it in my library. I haven't read it since, but my point is that it changed the way I saw the lost years of Jesus. And I wasn't going to believe, the concept that he just, was making chairs and tables. And then suddenly one day he decided to come in and start kicking over the merchants' tables. That was not fucking sitting well with me. I did not believe that. And anyway, I'm blown away. Any questions or comments? Thank you so much for you're very kind. Thank you. Thank you, Divine Miss. I love you too, sister. So if you miss any of this, we start out with Paul, who hijacked the religion, hijacked Yeshua's beautiful, sweet, loving, all-inclusive teachings, right? And how Christianity decided to literally strip women of their voice, their power. And it's not just Christianity. When I say 3 Abrahamic religions, you can see that happening in other parts of the world that are not following a Christian system. They're following something else, but they're very similar. I would say even, to some cases, even more brutal in the way they exercise their right to take away women's right to speak, move unmolested, unaccosted. Why is it that I can't go jogging at 3 o'clock in the morning without being fearful of my safety? Why is this normalized? And there are women who rebel against this, and they will. In fact, I was seeing a woman who was jogging at 4:30 in the morning, and I hate to say that to women who do that. You're playing. It's not if, it's when. We live in a world where it's not if, it's when. That's not fear-mongering. That's fucking common sense. With anything. If you fail at a business, eventually, one day, you'll actually succeed in a business. It's a numbers game, my friend. It's something I learned when I was a kid. You try and you try and you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail. And then one day you win. Good or bad. So we live in a world where we have to protect our good men. And going back to Alex Pretti, when women say the bear in the woods, I'll say we need to protect the men like him, who was actually saw a woman launched off her feet to the snowbanks, right, on the sidewalk, launched, literally, watch the video, launched. And he protected her from being pepper sprayed. And he lost his life for protecting, I believe, 2 women, but definitely one woman who lives today because of his, what happened. And I don't want to hear about any other thing. But when the whole exploration of this life was, how do you fucking not see what we see? And I deconstructed how. Hopefully. I'm certainly not a teacher in that level. I talk base facts. Any fucking 12-year-old or 9-year-old would understand what I basically said. Unless he or she is being programmed not to think. I can't help for that. But watch the beginning of this live if you miss anything, because that is the question. How? How the fuck can't you believe what you saw with your own two eyes? I think we explored it today. And we have to protect the men like Alex out there. There are a lot of men speaking. Good men who would protect you. They would put their bodies in front of you being harmed. And our job as high priestesses is to make sure that we protect those men for our daughters, for yourself. Because right now we have way too many men who are basically saying, follow the rules, shut the fuck up, don't get involved, and you'll be fine. Well, the problem with that is that the suffragette movement would have never happened, and the civil rights would have never happened, and we would still have people enslaved, and we'd still have women as chattels. So now what? My little fine little, friend, misogynistic friend, my little friend that thinks that women should shut the fuck up and look pretty and just show me your tits type of friend. We have to protect men like Alex. He was not safe because there was 1 against 7. It's an actual good number because it's a number that shows that for every good man, I'm just going to say it, for every good man, there's about 100 fucking zealot nuts who think you should shut the fuck up and be pretty and bear babies and not complain and make bread from scratch. Just so you know. So it's not bear in the woods. It's let's create this kind of society. Just so you know. So it's not bear in the woods. It's let's create this kind of society. Kind of society we want to experience. The kind of society where Hypatia would be safe to outdo her father, Theon. Hypatia would be celebrated. Her father was probably very proud of her. A good man would say, oh my God, you're smarter than me, my beautiful daughter or my beautiful son. You're better looking than me. You're smarter than me. That's a good parent. That's what you want. Please outdo me. My son outdoes me. Outdoes me. My son outdoes me. He's smarter. He understands things that I fucking have no clue. I'm just straight up. And I feel so happy to see that in action. And Theon loved seeing his daughter expand. Those are the kinds of men we need. And Alex was one of them. 37. Yeah, they were both 37. And by the way, on the numerology aspect of that, I thought of it. 10, 10. 10, 10. Well, what is 10, 10? You're not going to believe this. 10, 10 is, I'm actually going to read it to you verbatim. How's that? Verbatim. From the Linda Goodman's book, Star Signs, The Secret Code of the Universe. Yeah, by the way, she wrote this. I don't know if I have time to tell you. I'll tell you in a minute. So 10. I'm going to read you exactly what it means so you understand it. The Wheel of Fortune. By the way, it's the Wheel of Fortune in tarot. 10 is symbolized by Isis Osiris, a number of rise and fall according to personal desires. The name will be known for good and evil. Depending on the action chosen, 10 is capable of arousing the extreme response of love or hate, respect or fear. Wow, sound familiar? Let's continue. There is no middle ground between honor or dishonor. Every event is self-determined. Self-determined. 10 is the symbol of love and light, which creates all that can be imagined. Also contains the code image 10. Ordain image it, and it shall be. Ordain image it, and it shall be. Did you hear that? You want the new world? Well, fucking start doing something about it. Manifest it. Ordain it, and it will be materialized. The power for manifesting creative concepts into reality is inherent. Isn't that interesting? But must be used with wisdom, since the power for absolute creation contains the polarity for power for absolute destruction. Self-discipline and infinite compassion must accompany the gift of the former to avoid the tragedy of the latter. Discipline must precede dominion. Did you hear that? Discipline. What did we see? Lack of discipline. Complete lack of self-regulating emotions. Precede over dominion. Unfortunately, some 10 people fail to realize their powerful potential. By the way, guess what year this is? It's 10. 2026 is 10. So we had 2 people lose their lives, both 37, 10, 10. Charlie Kirk was 10, just so you know. That was his birth, that was his life path number, and it was also the day he died, September 10th. And you know why it was 10? Because it was September, which is 9, and it was 2025, which is 9, which cancels out, which means it was 10. Let's continue. Thank you, Sherry. Unfortunately, unfortunately, some 10 people fail to realize their power potential and consequently harbor deep-seated feelings of frustrations. What are we seeing? People were going, I'm so depressed, I'm so angry, I don't know what to do. Do something. Learn from the great ones. Learn from Dr. Joe Dispenza, for Christ's sake. Control your fucking monkey mind and create a new world. What are we doing here? So harbor deep-seated feelings of frustration, causing them to feel unfulfilled and to occasionally behave in a somewhat proud and arrogant manner to cover such unnecessary feelings of inferiority. What are we seeing? But let's go to 1, because ultimately the single compound number is 1. So let's go to 1. 1. The number 1 vibrates to the sun. In tarot, it's 19, which is 1. 1 plus 9 is 10, which is 1. Now let me explain something to you about numerology and how the universe speaks to us. 1 connects to the sun. And the sun means what? The light. But what does it mean? It means you get to see everything. The cockroaches aren't hidden. You just turn on the fucking tarmac airport with all the lights, and now you can see everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. 1 is the number of original action, the initiating basis of all other numbers. A person or entity influenced by the number 1, if born on the 1st, 10th, 19th, or 28th of the day, of any month of the year, so are those born on the, let me continue. The number 1 is attitudes and characteristics will be periodically exhibited by the person, one, or entity, and will interact with the person or entity's personality in different ways depending on the individual sign. Okay, well, let's look at Aquarius, because what happened? Actually, it's Capricorn, excuse me. You know why I'm saying that? Because it happened in January. Both these people, Good and Pretti. So the 1 vibration is in sharp contrast with Capricorn, right? Capricorn and Aquarius. The Aquarius sign is connected to human rights. It's connected to humanity. The age of Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius. But on the 10th, when Good lost her life, this was still under the vibration of Capricorn, earthly concerns. Hang on, let me read this. The underlying desire is to be inventive, creative, and strongly original. These people or things quite definite in their views and can be stubborn when thwarted. The dislike restraint and must feel free. They're almost always rise to some position of authority in whatever they undertake. Otherwise, they'll pout in the corner. I'm just going to skip all this shit. Let me just tell you, 1 is the sun, 1 is clarity, 1 is healing, 1 is all about see it, and you cannot unsee it. If 1 in terror is upside down, meaning 19, which is the sun, upside down means you can't see shit. There are secrets. So, basically, which is interesting that you asked, what the one, the fact that they were born, they were both 37, which is no mistake. And then Good and Pretti means, hang on, we know what Good means. Name meaning. Hang on. Let's see if I can find it again. I'm trying to remember. Hang on. A deviation of that in Sanskrit means it's preti. It would be preeti. In Sanskrit would mean love, joy, pleasure. What else does it mean? So it means pretty, of course, right? It means pretty, but there was another meaning that was much more. It functions as positive attributes derived from the English word pretty, implying someone who is attractive. Origin, it's a modern variant spelling of the English words, blah, blah, blah. There was something else that it meant something else. So let me look at Alex, because I know there's a meaning behind Alex. Protector of men. And he was a VA nurse. And I actually reposted him actually doing the last rites on a VA veteran who died. You'll see it. I've reposted it. And other people are reposting it too. He was a good man. Defender of men, protector of men. Alex. Protector of men with love. So, we've gone through the numerology. We've gone through the meanings. And it's hitting people really hard because anyone with eyes, anyone who's not dogmatically brainwashed can see it. And those who are brainwashed can't. When you see Christy Nomini, Bimbo Barbie with the blank eyes, blank, just there's nothing there. There's no one home. I don't know what's home, but I would say more reptilian, less human, just saying. But you can see that they don't care. They don't care. And the way you fight this isn't fire with fire. You fight it the way, and you don't even fight it. You do the transmutation. You need to write. Do you know what the real battle is for all of us? It's our monkey minds. That's the battle. We need to discipline our monkey minds to become the servant to our soul. And our soul is a multidimensional energy, and it can create realities. Many, many, many realities. And I talk about it so often, it's not even funny. And I talk about it, and I first read about it with you guys when I wrote the book, Mind Power into the 21st Century, about the holographic universe. So I've talked about it. I talk about nature of reality. I've talked about the languages of water from Emoto, Dr. Emoto, to Veda Austin. I've talked about this. I know how hard it is. Trust me, we have bills, we have to do this, we have to do that. I get it, but we have to constantly circle back to the essence of our truth and why we're here. And we need to be of service to our soul, and we need to be in service to the collective as much as we can possibly do. Does that make sense? Of course, some people got pissed off. Do you see that? Look at the comments. In this live, we're filtered to protect the community's enjoyment of this live. It's kind of wild that anything that connects with peace pisses people off. It's mind-blowing to me. And what we're seeing is that in action with the monks who are walking for peace. They're not evangelizing. They're not converting. They're just talking because people want them to talk. But I bet you, if people didn't need them to talk, they would walk in silence and sleep in silence and eat in silence and continue their journey without talking. I find it interesting, my little trolls, that you find that talking about peace and mind power and human rights and female equality to the masculine, that if you do not have females that are equal to you, you as a masculine will be lost. And guess what? You are lost. The gender wars is by design. And we need to stand together as good men and women, as an example to the fracture, toxic patriarchy and matriarchy that supports the toxic patriarchy. It's a two-way street, my friends. The pagan religions had more heart and more soul. And did they believe in God? Yes, they did. They saw God in the rising sun, in the wind, in the ocean, in the trees, in the animals, as spirit guides. They respected and revered everything created by God. Not to subjugate, not to dominate, not to destroy. Everything created by God. Not to subjugate, not to dominate, not to destroy. So if me talking about peace and balance pisses you off, you need some help. You need a lot of help. Like, seriously. If watching monks walk for peace pisses you off, there's something seriously wrong with you. If the two images of Good and Pretti, you're like believing the lingo of whatever, these weird 1984, in 1984, George Orwell, they say, you will not believe what you see with your two eyes. It's being quoted again and again and again because it's true. That's what's happening. And if you want to be a little troll in the world, you know what I mean? And you don't want to think, what are some of the famous quotes from George Orwell? What is the famous quote? The party maintains, it's on Google, by the way. The party maintains absolute power through fear, surveillance, and the thought police who punish thought crime. Manipulation of truth. History is constantly rewritten to align with the party's current narrative and concepts, like doublethink. The creation of news speak and to narrow the range of thought by eliminating words. I'm not going to even say the words. So, and the protagonist in the book, it was written, by the way, in 1949, is, what's the name? Winston Smith. That's why they're having us use the word grape instead of rape. And unaliven instead of, you could come up with much, like, I'm going to say it. Why are you saying that? I'm hearing some people say it outside on the streets. Unaliven, he was unalive. No, he was killed. He was slaughtered. His life was ripped out of his hands. There are ways to say it. Say the words for the right actions. Okay? Because words have frequency. And I hate when people, it's spelling. It's spelling what? In English? Because it's not spelling in French. It's not spelling in Italian. So God is dog. Well, it's not that in fucking French or Italian or Hindu. Let's get a grip here. The English language is not the only language on the planet. There's no secret fucking codes here. The codes are in numbers. Because it's irrefutable. 10 is 10. 10 is 10 in Arabic. It's 10 in French. It's 10 in Chinese. It's still 10. It's 10. It's 1 plus a 0. It's 10. No questions asked. And the meanings of these words is what we need to excavate. Okay, people like to call it angel numbers. 1111. Well, 1111 is 4, which is the number of the volunteer. For one thing. Do you understand? There's a whole chapter on 4, by the way. I mean, a whole fucking chapter. But when you go 1111, what is 11? Do you want me to read it to you? I'm going to read it to you. 11 on its own is the muzzle line, a clenched fist. This is a number of hidden trials and treachery. From others, it represents two members of the same and the opposite sex or two opposed situation. In either case, compatibility of interest is lacking and interference from a third force must be conquered. It's necessary to unite divided goals to avoid a sense of frustrated incompletion. The third interference force can be a person or an idea, and it can take the form of a refusal to see the other side as an obstacle to harmony. The origin of the separating force must be identified in an attempt to make or to seek compromise. Occasionally, conflicting desires within one's own self are seen as a reflecting mirror. 1111. Or 11. Two forces, two desires stand apart and must ultimately unite for happiness, yet each must remain individual even after being joined, for each possess its own worth. So 1111 is a mirror. Okay, but what does it mean? Well, I call it the volunteer number, 4, because it's 4. And let me see if I can find this. Hang on. Hang on, okay? Okay, so 8 is a karmic number, and 4 is more of a volunteer. They're called the numbers of fate, 8 and 4. Numbers of karma and hard luck seems to pursue those whose lives are dominated by the 4 and an 8. When the 4 or the 8 is the single number of the birth day, you can figure it out. I'm not going to go through it. The number has been chosen by the person it represents on the wiser state of grace between incarnations. The higher self, soul, or spirit, realizing that there are heavy karmic debts to be balanced, which have been delayed or procrastinated for too many lifetimes, chooses the magnetic birth channel of the 4 or the 8 to ensure that these long overdue karmic obligations are faced and finally neutralized. On the level of awareness between incarnations, the full import of the karmic chain is comprehended. That's why I do numerology with my clients. When I do my first reading with a client, I do their numerology. It's somewhat analogous to the decision of a student who has continually postponed studying for exams or a test. And the deadline draws near, recognizes that it's time to get serious and make up for the procrastination. No more fun weekends, no more stalling or goofing off. It's cram time. Time for extra hard study and attention to scholastic obligations. That's what 4 and 8 is. But 4 is less heavy karmically than 8. 8 is heavy. Naturally, one can't avoid the 4 or 8 vibration as a birth number, nor should one be able to, since the 4 or the 8 guarantees that the person influenced by it will be placed involuntary in specific situations where particular karma will be balanced in the present existence. Therefore, you might think it is unwise to try to remove any further 4 or 8 influence from your life because its purpose for being there is so spiritually sound. But this is not necessarily true. And so I'm going to get to it. I'm just going to encapsulate what she's saying. The 4 and an 8 is a warning. The 4 and an 8 tells you, hey, listen, you fucked up. Okay, so you got shit to do. The 4 is more connected to the volunteer number, and the 8 is I either betrayed myself, or I betrayed myself and I betrayed others. And of course, at some point, right, as you go through your spiritual awakening, those numbers are completely neutralized. They have no density at all. None. And suddenly, you're like, those numbers mean nothing to you. They do not influence your experience in this incarnation any longer because you've passed your exams. Do you understand? Like, for example, 18 is spiritual material conflict. It's connected to the moon. In tarot, it's connected to the moon, which is confusion. It's I don't know where I'm going. It's secrets. It's unsaid things, lying by omission, things of that nature. But it also connects to the spiritual navigation of letting go of material concerns, material gratification, and going into the number 9. 1 plus 8 is 9, which is God's perfect master number. And it's about connecting to being a co-creator of what's really important. Do you understand? And so at that point, you start walking, you start walking in what people call in your light, in your truth. In the truth as well. The truth, which is objective, and your subjective truth in your own personal journey. Isn't that interesting? To me, this is interesting because isn't that what we're supposed to do with our children and grandchildren, is teach them higher wisdoms, not lobotomizing their third eye, their crown chakra, their root chakra, making that everything that was taught. And so it sounds like it radicalizes, and it's really like, you could say, as you wipe the sleep from your eyes, as you ignite your synapses in your brain to fucking think, and then to ignite your brain to allow it, the pineal gland, to be ignited from its calcification over time, not just this incarnation, but many, it's gonna be scary. Because as far as your point of view is concerned, you've never experienced this before. The truth is you have, but it was probably 3,000, 4,000, maybe 100,000 incarnations ago. You see what I'm saying? Because if you believe in some of the teaching of the Easterners, the great yogis, gurus, as they say that the average person has had 8 million incarnations. 8 million. You see what I'm saying? So the question now isn't about, should I remember all my incarnations? Because that's dumb. You'll never will. And you wouldn't be able to hold that energy, okay, at all. Obviously. But what it is to acknowledge that there are things that have scarred your soul. And that you need to just understand that there's nothing wrong with scars as long as they don't impede your journey of ascension. And that's really how it should go. What you should understand. Okay? All right, I'm going to let you go. This was a long live. I didn't expect to be this long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Please follow me on YouTube, okay? Sending you much love on your journey. Namaste.